everyone. Welcome back to Okashikon Online. We have taken an extended break, and I thank you all so much for your patience. I know that viewers will be trickling in over the next few minutes, so we're going to start off slow and easy to get us back into the streaming kind of mood. My name is Julianne. I'm the host here for Make Your Monday, a show about making and the creative life. We have a very special guest with us tonight, so I will get into that in just a moment. But first, I would like to thank everyone for their patience while I've been gone. I had several family things crop up, and I was out of town and was not able to stream. So I really appreciate the concern that you have all sent to me, the messages. They were all very appreciated, and hopefully I was able to respond to you. But if not, know that I certainly am thinking of you, and I'm glad to be back and glad that we can have this time to create together and to hopefully make your Monday a little bit more special. We do have our regular programming is going to be resuming from now. And so as far as my shows are, Japan Stories will be returning on the 24th of this month. So, it's always the fourth Sunday of the month. And this month's topic is going to be about Goshuin and Omamori, which are blessings and protective amulets and things that you can get at temples and shrines in Japan. So we're going to be talking about they've become a little bit trendy as a thing to collect, but we're going to be talking about the history of them. I even have some video watching some of the priests create the goshuin, which are the beautiful, I don't have my book with me, but they are beautiful handwritten and hand-stamped badges to symbolize the fact that you have worshipped or prayed or visited a shrine or a temple. They are slightly different between shrines and temples. So let me check that my Twitch is up and running. I know that we are working live, but I can't see it. So I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty here. Let's get that going. Let me see what's happening here. I'm still only seeing can someone else verify for me? Hopefully the director can verify for me in the background, because I am only seeing that this was on a few minutes ago and not that it is live now. I know that it is live because StreamYard is telling me that it is. However, I can't see it. So let me see if I can get this up, because I certainly want to be responding to your comments throughout the show. Please remember, if you are new to Okashikon Online and you are just watching this on Twitch, I know that we had some new people say that they were going to be attending. If you are not already registered on Twitch, I encourage you to do that. It is a free subscription. You can go do that right now and come back quite quickly. We will not be able to see your comments if you are not signed in. So you can certainly, great. Thank you, Timmy. For some reason, I can't see it, but I can see the comments in StreamYard. So I guess tonight I will just be flying a little bit blind. That should be okay, because StreamYard has got me covered. Yay, StreamYard. So again, remember that if you are not logged in, I will not be able to see your comments. And I would really encourage you to do that, because we have a wonderful guest with us tonight who's going to be talking about two of her absolute favorite passions, which are making obento, which are like lunch boxes. We'll get into what they are in a minute, but we have a food theme for the evening. But also, Sara is an author and will be talking to us about her writing life and also how food ties into her novels and things like that. So let's get Sara on the screen. Thank you, Sara. Hi, so glad to have you back.
Thank you.
For our regular viewers, I've just turned red again. My camera's doing strange color things tonight. I promise I am not honestly beet red. You can see I'm turning in and out. But Sara was one of our guests on New Year's, and we had a lot of fun talking about bento briefly, and we decided to bring her back and have a full-length presentation about it. For our Okashikon people who have been to our live convention, hopefully we'll be able to do again sometime next year, hopefully. People who've been to our live convention know that I usually do a kawaii bento show, and Sara goes to conventions throughout the Southwest and has done bento shows, and so we kind of bonded over that. Now, I will say in particular, because I don't work outside the home and I don't have children, when I'm making a bento, I'm usually doing it to show off.
So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm not as skilled at sort of like everyday things. But Sara, would you like to introduce yourself and what it is that you're going to be talking to us about, and then we can get into the presentation?
Sure. So, はじめまして、どうぞよろしくお願いします。Fujimura Sara です。Phoenix, Arizona に住んでいます。これは私の新しい本がです。Faking Reality と言います。 So, hi, my name is Sara Fujimura. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and this is my newest book, and it's called Faking Reality. So, I am a YA author. I write full time. I have 4 books out, and all of them are very foodie based. And the last one in particular takes place partially in a Japanese restaurant. So, if you're wondering why I chose to do that, is because I am a foodie, just like Julia. I'm a foodie, and I love Japanese food. In case you're wondering why this very really white woman has the last name is Fujimura. I'm married to a Japanese man. We've been married for 27 years now. Yeah, so we've been married for 27 years. We have 2 grown children. They're 23 and 21, and we are trying to be we're a biracial family. We're a bicultural family. We're trying to be a bilingual family. We are not there yet. Only my husband is truly bilingual, but we go to Japan every summer, except for the last 2 for obvious reasons, and we spend about a month in Japan with my in-laws. So it's different than if I was just going to Japan for a vacation and I stayed in a hotel and I did all the touristy things. So, we do a homestay, and then we go out and we do other things too. But my mother-in-law is a retired high school English teacher, so I can ask her all the whys and the hows behind things, and we really connect over food. And so a lot of the cooking things I've learned from her, and I can ask her the deeper questions about not only just like taste, but Japan has all these rules about everything, and different seasons have different foods, and for us too, because pumpkin spice latte, we don't drink pumpkin spice latte in the spring, but it's even bigger than that. So that idea of what's in season and what brings people happiness, or oh, it's fall, so now we're gonna have different
Sweet
things. So
potatoes.
sweet potatoes, or
Oh,
just different
when I
things
was
that we
there,
know of.
last time I was there was in the fall, and everywhere you went, sweet potatoes everywhere. Yeah, and maple and all. Yeah, so it's wonderful. My background when it comes to food is my mother has a PhD in home economics. And so I grew up going to food shows, as she was one of the hosts of these food shows all around the Mid-South. So Basin, Tennessee, that kind of thing. So I grew up, my 2 doors down neighbor was one of the most famous restaurateurs in Memphis, Tennessee. And so food has been a huge part of my life. And we had Japanese exchange students for my entire life. So even before I knew what a bento was, we had bento boxes in our house. And my mom didn't know what to do with them, but we had them. And so that sort of started me on this journey. And then, of course, Chiara Ben became really popular. And that got me hooked. But sorry, I interrupted you there. So
No,
go
that's
ahead.
okay. Yeah, I'm always interested in how people got into Japanese cooking and the bento and stuff. So like Julianne said, I work at in Arizona. I work at some of the anime cons. So the one I just did was over Labor Day weekends called Saboten Con, and that's our biggest anime con. I mean, we have our version of it's called Phoenix Fan Fusion. But when I'm there, I'm more in writer's mode. But when I'm at the anime cons, Saboten Con and Taiyocon, I am the Obento lady. So I sell bento boxes and chopsticks and molds. And the biggest thing that I sell, though, is knowledge. And so it's the anime cons skew much younger, so it's more high school and college age students. And so whether they are cooking for themselves or just out of the house, and now they have to make their own decisions and stuff, and really teaching them some skills of how to cook different foods, or if they want to impress their friends, or have people over to watch the new anime, or if they want to have a date over or something like that. Like, okay, here's the things that look really impressive and look really difficult. So easy. So we could give you like the hacks and things to make you look really cool. so like you're saying, like if you don't work outside your house, or now like my kids are grown, and my daughter's out of the house and my son works 3rd shift, so they're in charge of making their own food now. They don't need me. But when they were growing up, from the time they were 4 and 6 until they finished high school, I made bento every day for them.
Wow.
So you can imagine how many little plastic baggies did not go in the landfill, because we would use the boxes, we wash them out. We had like a whole huge set for different sizes, and we'll talk more about the house to use later.
I brought a small section of mine. So some people who are our regular viewers know that my desk is this like never-ending black hole. I do presentations, and then things just never get put back. And so there's just this pile around me of all my craft supplies and my bento supplies. So I just want to very quickly plug the fact that we will find a link and throw it up later. Maybe the director will find it while we're talking. But on YouTube, we have a sister city here in Austin, and our sister city is Oita. So we had the Austin Oita Sister City Committee, and I'm on the board of that. And last year, right when the pandemic hit, we had to close down our festival, and we decided, because it was our 30th, thank you, that is the OISA Facebook page is going across the bottom of the screen, and if you scroll back on there to the videos, we had a big festival, online festival last year called 30 Things in 30 days. It was our 30th anniversary. So for the month of April, we did one Japanese related video every single day, and I did my cute hack video. So this is very much on how to make things cute, but not necessarily cooking anything different, just how to take stuff you would normally cook for lunch and then make it cute. So you can go look that up. It was a very long, I think it's probably an hour long or maybe even more. But yeah, you can see all the gadgets and all the tools and all the fun things you do without having to learn any recipes. But we're going to take it definitely a much more into the authentic side tonight, because we're not just cheating with this tonight. Sarah's going to teach us the proper way to create a bento, including some of the nutrition things that I certainly don't do. But that they're certainly much more beneficial to our health than having peanut butter and Nutella sandwiches.
Everybody cheats because nobody has time to spend an hour. So even what's really interesting is to watch the evolution of bento. So, even in Japan. So in the United States, when I started as the bento lady, how I got started in the anime cons was my daughter was about 12 or 13 years old, and she and her friends were all into anime. They had just gotten started and they wanted to do cosplay. And I'm like, no, you're not going by yourself. So I was the con mom who walked like 2 steps behind them until they're like, could you please not? Can you please not do that? So we made it into a thing. So I still wanted to be there and to keep an eye on them. And also that way they could stay in the hotels and stuff like that. Because obviously, when you're 14 years old, you cannot do that. But I needed somewhere that I was not under their feet, but I also could keep an eye on them. So I'm like, well, what can I do that's different from everybody else? Well, what do I like to do? I like to cook. I like to make bento. Nobody's doing bento. So this was probably 10 years ago when I got started. And at that time, I had to explain to people what bento is. Now you can go to Target and Walmart and buy bento boxes. And even if you watch some of the back to school stuff, you'll see kids with bento boxes.
IKEA. My most recent one was from IKEA too. So yeah, they're everywhere now.
So now we can move away from, this is why you need to use these boxes because it's good for the environment. Now he's like, okay, let's work what's inside the box, because if you're still putting crappy food inside the box, then that's what we need to work on next. But okay, but first we start, people are using boxes. Yay. So let's keep doing that. And now let's work on making it fun and making it nutritious. And the idea that things have come back around with people wanting to do food prep, whether they're changing their diet, they're trying to gain weight, they're trying to lose weight, they're trying to do a keto diet, or whatever, they're trying to change how they eat, and using bento to help them with that. So the meal prepping that's going on to help you during the week, even if it's just snacks, it doesn't have to be a full meal that looks like Pikachu and everything like that. It can just be, I know I'm going to be running errands, and to keep me from going to Starbucks and getting a Frappuccino, I'm going to bring my apples. And they're in this, I have a really cute little bag that says whale hello there, and it has like a whale on it and stuff like that. So just like cutting up the apple and putting in that, and then throwing that in my purse, or a handful of nuts in there. And it's nice, it's cute, and it keeps me from wasting money and putting crap in my body.
That's fantastic. Well, why don't we start? You do have a presentation that you have that goes into this. I have questions, but I want to make sure that I'm not asking something that you are going to already cover. So let's move on to that. Let me switch quickly.
Yeah. So at any time you have questions, go ahead and interrupt me.
Okay, I absolutely will. But like I said, my questions are a bit more from I grew up with the brown bag lunch, and the all the white bread bologna sandwich kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm transitioning. So a lot of my questions are based on transitioning from the traditional American packed lunch into more of a bento style.
So what we're doing tonight is more of the traditional bento. So if you are trying to make traditional style, also if it's mostly gluten-free, because it's going to be a lot of rice-based kind of stuff. But that idea of like, okay, if this doesn't work for you, then try that instead, or just use it as a jumping off point to help you, up level your lunch a little bit. So, okay, let's get started.
I mean, as a side note, I would just say that I found that eating Japanese food, I'm so much healthier. Just so much healthier, and I've lost so much weight without even having to try. So that's why I'm trying to switch and to eat the traditional, healthier version of it.
So one of the first questions I get is it o-bento or is it bento? So if you could push the little button there. So if you're drinking tea, it's ocha. Sometimes it's o manju. Sometimes you have osake. And traditionally, my husband said that you would say "oh sushi" too, but because sushi is known around the world now, they've kind of dropped that. So "oh" is just an honorific, and so the way I explain it to other people, if I'm making something for myself, it's bento. So I'm humble. I'm gonna say this is my bento that I made for myself. And if I've been giving it to Julianne, then I'm definitely like, oh, here's my humble bento. Even if it took me 2 hours to make and it looks like Pokemon characters, it's still my humble bento to you. But you would receive it as an "oh bento." It's like, oh, you made this for me. Oh, your obento is so lovely. So it's like elevated. So what I usually tell people, especially Americans who are trying to go to Japan, is when in doubt, be overly polite, and because you can never go wrong with being too polite. And even my Japanese friends are like, Sarah, we've known each other for almost 20 years now. You don't have to speak to us in such a polite way. It's like, yes, I do, because that's the only way I know how to do it. So it's okay to be extra polite. And then the other thing, if you've been studying Japanese, they don't pluralize words. So whether you have one obento or 10 obento, it's still obento and not obentos.
Very true. Let's move to the next slide.
So obento making is an art form, and these are the ones that you see on Pinterest. These are the ones that you see that people make on YouTube and Facebook. And it can be this. It can be beautiful and very elaborate, but it doesn't have to. Because bento just means boxed meal, and usually it's a boxed lunch. So it can be a picnic, it can be something that you brought to work with you, it can be something you got at the kombini. So if you go to Japan, my number one hack for people trying to save money in Japan is go find a Lawson's. Lawson's is my favorite. Lawson's is in my first book, Tanabato to Wish. Lawson's, 7-Eleven, Circle K, they have all kinds of prepared food, and it's so much cheaper than eating in a restaurant. And like the one at the bottom with the tonkatsu, the pork cutlet, and like it's a full meal. And if you're over 20 in Japan, you can have an alcoholic beverage and dessert, and it's still like less than $20. So that's a great way to save some money, and especially at the end of the day, if you're exhausted, you can just go to the kombini, get something, and bring it back to your hotel room.
I found that when I was there by myself, and I did have an apartment, so I could have cooked, but because I was in the fairly expensive neighborhood in Tokyo, it was so expensive to go to the grocery store, and then I had to carry it back for about 2 kilometer walk, which walking is not my strong suit, that it was just actually less expensive to go buy a one-person meal at the kombini than it was even to purchase a bunch of food and then carry it home and then cook it. Maybe not as healthy, but certainly very affordable. So you didn't mention Family Mart, which is my personal favorite one.
Oh yes, can't forget about Family Mart. Yes,
I know. Family Chiki is my obsession, really. In fact, I have a meme that says, Family Chiki, it's not a food, it's a drug. Because you get addicted very quickly. Okay, let me pop back over to this window. There we go.
So what is obento then? So it just means a boxed meal, and usually lunch. So technically, this Lunchable could be a bento. I was like, but no. No food-like products. Let's have some real food here. So if you decide that you want to start making bento at home, the first thing you need to decide is what kind of containers you need. And I usually say, think about what you eat the most. A rectangular or a square one would probably be the best, because that way you can make sandwiches and salads or pasta, but you can also make a traditional bento with rice and the other side dishes. If you get started and you really like it, then you could go and get like the double stack, or like the little panda one that's like a different shape, that's a little bit harder to work with, but it's definitely something that you can do. And then you start off with one, and before you know it, they multiply like tribbles, and then they're all over the place, but you keep seeing them.
Do.
But I love,
I don't know if you have it. I don't know if
ahead.
you have an H Mart, but we have H Mart here in Austin, and H Mart is a Korean store, but it has a lot of Japanese products.
They
So I
do.
have, it used to be just there, and now it's not. I cleaned a little bit, and that was my mistake. But it is a very large but sakura-shaped double layer bento, which is definitely meant for multiple people. Because it has a bunch of different sections inside of it, so you can have a bunch of different options. And if I'm going to a picnic with friends, or I'm going over to a friend's house, and it's bring your own dish type of thing, a potluck, it works really well for that. So sometimes the bigger ones can be used even if you're not making a single person meal.
Yeah, and
But
so
yeah.
even with your other bento stuff, that idea that it doesn't have to be a full meal and it doesn't have to be the decorative meal. Like I said, it could be, I know I'm going to be out running a lot of errands today and I'm trying not to, eat out. So I'm going to throw a handful of crackers and a cheese stick and, Mekon, an orange in there or something like that. So it doesn't have to be like a full artistic piece. It could just be a container that's not like a butter tub. But no, it can be a butter tub. So decide what you want to eat. If you're more of a sandwich person, start with a rectangular one. How much you want to eat. And I think one of the things that people ask me the most is like, well, how does that enough food? That surely that's not enough food. But I think you would be surprised. So near the end, you'll see I did like a little experiment of like the brown bag plastic baggy kind of version versus the same amount of food, but in the boxes. So it's just really, really tight and compacted. And you don't like, if you get like a bag of single serve chips or something, this much is actual chips and like this much is air. So that idea of like you're taking that out and putting it into a smaller space, you might be surprised how much food you actually have. Or that idea of like you get out the measuring cup. So again, if you're doing some kind of like special diet or that you're changing your diet around or whatever, that you could see is like, well, how much actually is 1 cup? So you get out the measuring cup, or how much is 100 grams, and just trying to move away from the American supersize mentality. And it's like, what is the actual serving size? And you might be surprised of how much it
Yeah,
is.
that has definitely been one of my questions. So for people who are into bento making, you're probably familiar with Bento Expo, the TV show on NHK World. I have had the great pleasure to meet Mark Matsumoto, and he
Oh,
has some of
wow.
my art. So that's wonderful. My art has appeared on his channel briefly, because little chopstick rests are made of glass. But I notice they always make like an adult side and a kid size. And because I don't have children, I'm like, how do you know how much to put? Like, it's hard enough for me to know how much I want to eat. But if you're making it for someone else, is it just, as a parent, you generally know how much they're going to want? Or do you find that you guess wrong and a lot of food comes back?
Well, I think you have to kind of play with it. So that idea, if you're a parent or you're making it for somebody else, telling them not to throw the food away. And some of the schools do this too, because they want people parents to see how much is getting wasted. So that idea of like you just kind of eyeball it after a while. Or if your kid's going through a growth spurt, you might add like almonds or something that's really shelf stable. So if they want to eat it, they can eat it. Almonds have a lot of calories in them. It's a good fat, but that idea of like if you need like really heavy calories because they're really growing, or they have sports after school, or they need the extra energy, or just being able to pack like some cookies or something, like, well, if you need them, this is your afternoon snack. If you need it, if you don't need it, we'll just eat them again tomorrow or whatever. So just putting some stuff that's shelf stable that can be thrown in the bag for or emergency, or even like you walked out the door, forgot your lunch. It's like, oh dang it, but you have that bag of nuts. It's like, well, it's not great, but at least it's something to keep you going.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, because I know when I'm going to conventions, because I do eat gluten-free and I have a lot of dietary restrictions, I can never eat like con food. I can't just
Hmm.
buy whatever's available. And I tend to overpack, like substantially overpack. I bring enough that I wind up feeding everybody else instead of me. But I know that one of my biggest problems is having too much food that just doesn't get eaten in one way or another. But to make, I guess for me to think about having 2 servings, even though they may be in one box. That's
Hmm.
really a helpful tip. So
Well,
let's
so
go ahead.
because when I work in the cons too, I can't leave my table, or I can't leave my table for a long period of time. And also, if you've ever worked in like the vendor hall or whatever, you only get like one bite at a time before somebody will ask you a question. So you'll take a big bite of sandwich, and then you'll get like a crowd of people. So I make my own special bentos for when I'm in the booth, and it's all one bite kind of thing. So it's a cherry and a lot of wet stuff. So like a cherry tomato, a piece of cucumber, pineapple, but I also have like little crackers or pretzels, or like little cubes of cheese or pepperoni or something like that. Like one bite kind of things that I can kind of nibble on all day long. And then I eat, when I get home, I eat a big meal before I leave for the con, and I eat a big meal when I get home, and I just kind of nibble throughout the day. But what you're saying, that's why when I'm working at the con as the bento lady, one of my things that I've been doing this for years now, is if you come and show me that you made bento, I give you a free pair of chopsticks or $2 off something else on the table, like every day of con. And people have been taking me up on it for a long time, because I want to get people over the hump of it has to be this beautiful thing, or don't even bother. It's like, no, it could be a handful of crackers and a string cheese that you threw in the box and you brought it to con with you, and that totally counts, because just getting the idea of just doing it, just getting over the perfectionism of it, and then you get like a little prize or $2 off something on the table. So people have been doing that forever, and we definitely have people like, okay, I'm staying in the hotel, it's day 3, and I only have like Cheetos left, and that's it's like, fine, I don't care. But we also have people who like that's their thing. So every time they come, they show me these beautiful bento that they make, and I take pictures and put up on my Instagram. And I'm like, make sure you eat that out in the hallway. Like, look at there's your $8 hot dog that's disgusting, and look at my beautiful bento that I made here. So
wow. So another convention here in Austin that it has a lot of overlap with OkashiCon. They're not the same organizations, but we do have a lot of staff in common, and that is an 18 plus convention, only because it's a no kids, not because it's something adult rated. But UshiCon is usually in the winter, and unfortunately with the pandemic, we obviously haven't had a live version of it, but we usually on Sunday mornings have a tea party. And yes, we go all out with an elaborate British high tea, everything. So that's when we sort of pull out all the stops. And that's when I'm talking about when I bring a dish of something and I can pull out the very extra large bento. I don't have the 3-stack one for osechi, but certainly a large 2-stack one that you're going to a tea party or you're going to share with your friends at a con. It is fantastic to have. And then again, no single-use plastic waste to have to deal with afterwards.
Definitely. And at least it's healthier too, because you can, take apart like Mikan some oranges and put that in, or whatever, little grapes or something like that. So for osechi, there's osechi in Faking Reality, and Leo works in his family's Japanese restaurant, and they make osechi for the Phoenix community. And this is a fake thing, but they make it for the Phoenix community, and the main character Dakota, she and her family go over and spend it with them for New Year's. So that idea of like Leo doesn't celebrate Christmas, they celebrate New Year's instead, and there's a whole line to go with that. So that's what I wanted to weave into my stories, that it doesn't make or break the story, but it just adds an authenticity to it and just get to people to think in different ways. But so we got off track here. So
no, that's fine. This show is always like that. So
my other suggestions for people who are just getting started is to buy yourself some silicone cupcake holders, and you can just get those at Target. Those are awesome because they keep your foods like separated if you don't like them touching them.
I brought some right here. So again, I have my bag of things, but they look like this. And you can get the round ones, you can get the square ones. Yeah. So they'll squish. Yeah, if you don't have a lot, but you want to keep it. Like when I was a kid, I could not stand my food touching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still not the biggest fan of like mixing everything up together on the plate. So some things I just like I don't like my dessert and my gravy together. Like things like that don't work. But yeah, if you have people who are like that, these are fantastic because they can squish down into nothing, but they'll keep everything nice and separate, and they're reusable infinite number of times. And mine are even dishwasher safe. So that has been one of the biggest revolutions for me, even if I'm not trying to pack something that is like a traditional style meal, but I use these all the time now.
Yeah, so like if you have something greasy, like if you have like potato chips, or if you have something that can be kind of saucy, like strawberries or blueberries or something like that, just keeps things from touching each other. Or like cheese cubes, the moisture from the cheese can sometimes get on like crackers and kind of melt them a little bit. So it's just a way to keep things separately. The other thing is getting like the little tiny boxes, like you can see down in the corner, like the little circles, and that's when you just need like a little dab. So a little bit of salad dressing or mayonnaise or mustard or furikake to put on top of your rice, and they come in cute little shapes and stuff.
I have some of those. I'm not going to keep digging into the bag to show everything. Only if I don't have a picture of it. But I will remind our awesome viewers that we do have a Daiso, and we also have, and they have all of
H-Mart too.
I mean, all of this. H-Mart doesn't have the tiny ones, but I have seen people, because you can buy the empty fish, like the soy sauce fish. Mm-hmm. America doesn't do it quite as much as like Australia. In Australia, Japanese restaurants will always give you the little fish filled with soy sauce, but you can buy them empty in a big old pack and reuse them and fill them with your own condiments, and just keep, then you have like adorable little condiment holders too, and it can keep things from getting soggy. And that's always been a problem of mine, is like, if I put this on top of something else, is it going to get weird by the end of the day? Is my sandwich going to be mushy and, whatever else? But there's lots of adorable ways around it. And it's not just functional. And I think, to me, that's the happiest part of it, is to be able to have these really cute, adorable things that I just had to have in the store. because I'm terrible about buying stuff.
My Japanese friends laugh at me all the time because I cannot go into Daiso without dropping $100. Like every time I was like, you just went to Daiso like 2 days ago. I know, but there's more
American Daisos have $150 per transaction limit. Ask me how I know.
we always joke that like as soon as we leave the store, like the people like high fives, like, "Woo, made quota for the month." This crazy American lady.
And Daiso in America, you don't have to worry about being embarrassed because they don't have to count out each item. Whereas Daiso in Japan, they have to count out loud. It's great if you're practicing your numbers. But yeah, it gets very embarrassing when you're like 203, 204.
Yes, I know.
We did an entire show for the grand opening of Daiso a year ago now. And they're about to celebrate their 1 year anniversary. And I did mention the fact that I had gone to the world's largest Daiso, which is 8 stories. And yeah, we went.
Where's that? I need to go.
Funabashi. Funabashi is on the northeastern suburbs of Tokyo. So way out. It's technically in Chiba.
Oh wow!
But you keep going out past Asakusa on one of those lines, and the other thing to note about Funabashi is if you're into American style comics, there is also a bar there with American comic artist Gary Panter's work, and of course I have to go see that because Gary is my cousin.
Oh wow!
But yeah, there's an entire bar because he was part of Dark Horse Comics in the 70s, and so there are some like really really big American comic fans who just decorated the entire place with his work. He hasn't been there in like 40 years. But it's still up. So those are the only 2 reasons to go to Funabashi. There's literally no other reason to go to Funabashi. It's just a suburb. But
going to that Daiso sounds a little dangerous for me, but
it is. They're like traditional stuff. You know, they always have like a traditional Japanese section. It has here, literally, see my desk is full of everything. Literally things I bought at Daiso from the traditional section. It's an entire floor. A whole floor, and it's got like the most beautiful. It's got like bamboo walls, and it's super dangerous. So, but let's get back to bento. Can I move to the next slide?
Go ahead.
Okay.
So everything in Japan has rules, and bento is no exception. So it's the 4-3-2-1 rule. So 4 parts rice, 3 parts protein, 2 parts vegetable, and 1 part treat. So let's go ahead and start with the next one. 4 parts rice. So this is like the Japanese rice. So you can go back one. So you can do it just plain rice. You can make it the hinomaru with the umeboshi if you want to make it very traditional. The good thing is like even if you can't cook very well and you want to go and do like kyaraben, you see this style of the hinomaru obento like all the time in anime. So that way you're like, no, this is from you pick your favorite anime. They probably have it. But you can also put stuff on top of your rice. You can mix stuff inside your rice. So like ginkgo nuts or sometimes like the edamame. I've seen people do that if you like that. Next slide, please. You can press it into molds and cut out little faces.
I have a lot of the molds. Oops. Do you need to go back?
Yeah, go back one more, please.
Okay. All right. Go back. Why are you not going back?
Oh, you know what? It's okay. That's all right. We'll just so that idea that you can put it into you can make it into sushi, you can make it into onigiri, but the idea that if you want to make the traditional, there you go. If you want to make the traditional Japanese bento, you need to use the Japanese sticky rice, because if you try to put Uncle Ben's in the mold, it's not going to work. If you try to put like jasmine rice, it's not going to work. So you do have to use the Japanese rice to make the cute little stuff. But if you're making like a bowl, because I've seen like my daughter has one, it's actually made of glass and silicone, so she can do like the rice in the bottom and then put like the stuff on top, and so it's a different type of bento, but it's still bento. So the next thing you need is some protein, and you can use you can use the stuff that you've had for dinner. You can use the kamaboko, the fish sausage, and fish sausage in Japan comes in all kinds of cute characters and stuff, Pikachu and all kinds of little things. People use a lot of eggs, and you can use like your traditional egg in it. Like Daiso, they have these egg molds, so you can make your hard-boiled eggs into like little rabbits, or I like they have like stars and stuff that you can cut and then just kind of like fan it out. And
I definitely have that in this giant bag of tricks. I'll be looking while you're explaining. Here we go. I have one that is Hello Kitty.
Oh, cute.
So it turns into Kitty-san. And if you open it up, so the trick on these, as I know Sarah knows, but for the audience, is that you put the egg in while it's still warm.
It's hot. It's hot without burning yourself.
And it's hot. Yeah, it's cooked and peeled and it's hot. And then you squash the two bits together. And that's why it comes out and has a little face on it. The same as like the little bunny rabbit that you see there. But yeah, so this is one that I got.
Mitzi had a little comment that hers never come out that well. So here is my suggestion for you: is keep it as hot as you can without hurting yourself. Peel it, stick it in the mold, squish it, put it on the counter, let it come to room temperature first. Then you put it in the refrigerator and try to leave it in there overnight and see if it'll come out a little bit better for you. So
that's a really great tip.
Yeah, but that idea of like really hot to warm, room temperature, and then putting it in and letting it cool down. But you can also use, if you go to H Mart, you can get like the quail eggs, and so you can make. That's what the top right hand one is, like the little tiny quail eggs, and see they've put it into one of the silicone cupcake holders. If you can make scrambled eggs, you can make Pikachu's face because you're just drawing on with a little ketchup and some seaweed. You can just take your little scissors and cut out the nori, put it on there. If you want to make the traditional bento, you can make the tamagoyaki, which is in the bottom corner. You could go to H Mart and buy it pre-made too. So there you go.
Very true.
So next we need some vegetables, and you can use the traditional vegetables like the tsukemono, which is in the top left, which is the pickled daikon and the pickled cucumbers. I love the renkon, the lotus root, so because it looks so lacy and it doesn't have much flavor to it. So if you're kind of picky about your vegetables, go ahead and give it a try, because I like to saute it in some soy sauce and some sugar, so it gives it a little bit of flavor, but it has a very mild taste. But I love it just because it's so pretty. It's so pretty more than anything else. Down below that, you can have the kabocha, like the different kinds of like sweet potatoes and pumpkins and things like that. And then in the bottom left-hand corner is burdock root and carrots. So that's sauteed together. You'll see that a lot. It looks like sticks if you go to the grocery store. So
that's one thing I have not been able to make properly. My kimpira, that's so when it's julienne's like that. Yes, julienne's, not julienne. But when julienne does it, it comes out burnt.
Yeah, I haven't been able to get mine to turn out right either. So, and sometimes you can buy it pre-made. So you're like, just buy it pre-made. But yeah, it's fun.
No, let's see what's going on. Here's more examples.
But you can also, one of the tips I give people is like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you're doing your vegetables. So whatever you're making for dinner, just put some to the side. So if you're making a salad, put some the salad greens to the side, get some cherry tomatoes. I like to use canapé cutters on like cucumbers, and you can just you don't even have to do all of them. You can just do like one as your like little focal piece. I love cherry tomatoes and like grape tomatoes because they don't take up a lot of space, but they give you a little pop. Carrots, you can also do the same thing with the canapé cutters on carrots. You can cut out stuff. But I like on the bottom where you can like saute vegetables, and whatever you're having for dinner, just put some to the side, and then you just add it to your bento and you're ready to go. And if you are going somewhere and you want to be extra, like, it seems it's Halloween season, you can get the pepper and use a really sharp knife and cut out like a little pumpkin face, or just make it fun for whatever holiday it is. But you don't have to do everything that way. You can just do like one.
That's adorable. And I love the little eyeball rice as well. That's so cute. I have the little shaker to make the teeny tiny little rice balls. People who watch our channel a lot will be familiar. We're always talking about them. The Tabby Eats channel out of Japan. Shinichi and Satoshi are wonderful friends of ours. And Satoshi does an entire series on gadgets, kitchen gadgets from Daiso.
I think I saw it. Because I remember them from New Year's, and I went back and I was looking at what they did, and I totally remember that one because I'm like, oh yes, most of my stuff.
I still have some that I haven't even taken out of the package yet, but because he reviewed them, I had to buy them. And this is a microwave rice maker. Now I can't eat eggs in America. Japanese eggs are a little different, so I can eat them. But we have a product here called Just Egg, which is a mung bean egg replacement. So we're going to try Just Egg because it cooks up like egg. It's really fantastic. We're going to try that in this little container. And I also have one that is for teeny tiny little omelets. And then they're already
Cute.
pre-shaped for you. So
Cute,
this was
cute.
another wonderful find from Daiso. And it even comes out, I'm not sure if you can see, but it comes out with a little divot in it so you can put the sauce in the little hole.
Ah.
So these are fantastic. I use them for all different kinds of things, but they're especially meant for making omelets in the microwave. So, I will say top tip, if you do buy these from Daiso, keep the instructions because the instructions will be in English. But if there's any like special cooking things, you will probably forget them if they get separated. So have a box where you keep all your bento stuff together, or I have a bag. And that way you can always be like, wait, how long was that again? Was it 30 seconds, 50 seconds? Just go ahead and keep that packaging with you because it can be incredibly invaluable. Like they all have it on the back. I'm not going to try to pull this up too close to camera, but even if you can't read the Japanese terribly well, you can figure out from the pictures. And then usually the numbers are fairly easy to understand, like the little symbol for the microwave and the little symbol for the number of seconds that you can figure out even if you don't understand any Japanese. So, but yeah, there's stuff to make everything. Anything you can cook, you can make it cute easily as well. So
we'll skip over this, but just the short version of it is if one of the dishes that I make a lot with my mother-in-law is just like a stir fry, and it's using the black sesame oil, so it adds a lot of flavor. So a lot of sesame oil, and then some sugar and some soy sauce, and then the sesame seeds. And you can do that with spinach, with kale, with broccoli. If you're doing something that's a little bit heartier, like carrots or asparagus, you need to add a little bit of water. But that idea that it gives it a nice flavor. So if you're trying to learn how to eat vegetables, like if you don't really like a lot of vegetables, this is a way to try it in a different way. It's like, yes, but this is a Japanese way that my mother-in-law taught me, so it's authentic. So it's just a little bit different. Or if you have vegetables that are getting ready to go bad, they're not bad, but they're like, you don't want to eat it in the salad because it doesn't look very good. You can just saute them, and you can do like a big pile of it, and it comes out like a little small one.
yeah.
So it's a good way to get some nutrition in you. Just be judicious with the black sesame oil because it can be a laxative. Just want to put that out there for you.
Well, but yeah, sesame oil has a wonderful flavor to it. I mean, it just gives everything an extra little punch. So now we're in the treat part.
Treat. So if you've been to Japan, you know that fruit is like ridiculously expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, well, when we get home, I will buy, like, I'll make a big fruit salad. But when we're in Japan, we don't eat a lot of fruit. But for Americans, we tend to eat a lot of sweets like cookies or cakes or something like that. And it can definitely be that, but you'll see in the pictures it's mostly fruit because it's such a luxury. But also they have like the little tiny jellos or little tiny puddings, or there's a little dango up there at the top. And but that idea that you don't see like huge piles of cookies and things like that. So again, even if you are trying to change your eating habits a little bit or like break your sugar addiction, that idea of like you're going to have a thing, but you're going to have one piece, and it's going to be part of this bigger meal, and you still your sweet tooth is happy, but you're not eating like 6 servings by accident.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. I'm looking at those little tiny jellos in there, and that's so adorable. But yeah, so cute. Okay, so we're learning our rules, but then we also need to look at more nutrition a little bit.
Yes, because of course there's more rules. So not only does you have to do the 4, 3, 2, 1, but it needs to have something that's green, something that's yellow, and something that's red. So the good thing is all those things that are naturally green, yellow, and red are your fruits and your vegetables, and things that have a lot of flavor, have a lot of texture, have a lot of color in them, and are natural. So even if it's like one little tiny pepper, or a cherry tomato, or some kiwi or something like that, that can add a lot of zing. Because otherwise, like you think of the traditional or a typical American, it's a white bread sandwich with peanut butter, and here's some graham crackers, and here's some apples that were peeled last night, so they're kind of oxidized, and like, well, and some milk, it's like womp womp. It's just sad. It's just sad to look at. So the idea is like you're making a lunch that is joyous, and it looks attractive and artistic, and like you're going to like want to take a picture for your Instagram and then put your phone away, because you're not just like mindlessly scrolling and shoving your face because you're just consuming calories, that you're actually being mindful of what you're eating. And that's, I think, more of a Japanese thing too. And not that all Japanese people do that, because that's totally not true. But that idea of just that bigger idea of being mindful of what you're eating, and that you don't need quantity, you need quality of what you're putting in your body.
I mean, I think this is a great rule of thumb, but it's something that I feel like is a bit higher than I am comfortable aspiring to at this point, especially because I have a lot of food allergies and I'm sitting here thinking, yellow is hard.
Yeah. But the good thing is, like, it doesn't have to, because like nobody's gonna come. The bento police are not gonna come until you can't eat your lunch because you forgot the yellow, or it's like, "Wait, you used a yellow jelly. Oh my goodness, you should have used this." It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But it's just that idea of putting more colorful things is what you're aiming for.
Yeah, I have seen where they so there are a couple of books that are available and certainly in ebook form as well. And sometimes the nutritionists tell us all the time that you just want a variety of color
Mhm.
because every single color has a different nutrient behind it. So I think the idea of having three colors other than the rice is really helpful. But I've seen where sometimes they're counting the meat as the yellow. Even though it's not really, but yeah, sort of like a
Or sometimes
brown sometimes
it's
counts.
the silicone cupcake holder is yellow, and it's like, well, good enough.
Oh, that's a great tip.
But at the end of
That'll
the
be
day,
my
it
tea.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But if you just want to be that extra about it, then. But the idea of, like, they want you to balance taste and texture too. So you don't want to have. That's why you see like the umeboshi. Because personally, I can eat umeboshi. It's not my favorite thing. But that idea that they want to have something that is very sour. So you want one thing that's sour, one thing that's a little sweet, something that's a little salty, something that's maybe a little fatty, something that's a little crunchy. So you're not having all of the same types of things. And then the idea of making things look artistic and attractive versus, like, a half smashed peanut butter sandwich because your book fell on top of it, and it's just not fun to eat, and you're just like consuming calories, and it's not filling your soul and filling your energy. It's just giving you energy by itself.
That makes sense.
So that idea of, like, I mean,
Oh,
even if you are making sandwiches or something really simple, that you could make that one thing that just stands out a little bit. So you don't have to do all the things. So one of the things I would tell people, especially moms who are like the con moms like I was, I'm like, I was you. But that idea that you don't have to spend an hour doing it. There's been times where I was really tired, so we would have a peanut butter sandwich, and I would cut the crust off, cut it in quarters, make it look like tea sandwiches, put a cute Pokemon pick in it, put a handful of grapes and a handful of baby carrots, and boom, I'm done. I'm going to bed. So if you have more time, it's Sunday night or something like that, then maybe you can make something artistic, or if it's a special event at school or something like that. But if you don't, it's okay, because it's still probably better than what they're serving in the school cafeteria, and it's definitely not a Lunchable.
yeah,
So if you can do
very
better than
true.
a Lunchable, then kudos.
So,
So yeah, go ahead and click one more. So I wanted to show you, like, oh, wait a minute,
oops,
that idea of,
it's
like, what
auto
it looks
timing. So
like
yeah.
what it looks like in a plastic baggie versus, like, if you just put it in boxes. And the only thing that I added a little tiny pot of ranch dressing, and then I added some Pokeballs to, I cut it off in like tea sandwiches, but I made it one step extra because I put them on top of each other. So instead of four, I put
Oh
like two,
yeah,
and they were like super long ones. And then I added two strawberries where I made a divot in the top, so now it looks like a little heart. So there you go.
that's
But
really
still, it's a peanut
cute.
butter sandwich and some carrots and some grapes, basically.
And whatever your beverage of choice, yeah. And
Yeah.
of course, having a reusable thermos is helpful as well.
Yes.
Okay,
So one of the things
so
people ask me is like, "Isn't your bento a mess by lunchtime?" Is like, no, not if you pack it tight, and especially if you use the silicone cupcake holders, it'll keep things from sliding around. So if its stuff is a mess, then maybe you need to add a little bit more, or you need to put something in it that'll keep it from moving around quite so much. Another thing, so if you watch a lot of anime, you know that you'll see people who will make bento for somebody else, the person that they're interested in, as a way of love. And that I totally understand that, because food is my love language. I love to cook for people. I made bento for my kids because that was how I showed you my love, and what have you. But if you use toothpicks to keep stuff from moving around, it can be very dangerous, especially if you don't tell the person where the toothpicks are. So if you're trying to impress them and get them to go out on a date with you, and then they bite into their bento and they get a toothpick rammed in the roof of their mouth, you will not get a second date. So I either make it really obvious that you're using a toothpick, and like the Daiso, it has all those really cute picks. Or don't use them, or at least tell them where you put the toothpick. But you really should not have to use toothpicks. I do use the little picks on I will use like a tortilla and put like lunch meat and spinach or whatever in there and roll it up and do like pinwheels sometimes, or like do it like a
Right.
burrito style. And I'll put a pin in, put the little pick in there just to keep it from unrolling, or I'll put one in the top of something to just keep it from moving around. But you don't really need to do that. I love idea of bento, but I can't spend an hour on something that will be consumed in 15 minutes. I hear that a lot. It's like, you don't have to. You really don't have to. Just go for a few foods that are cute and colorful and put them in, put them in a fun box. So whatever your fandom is, I have some boxes that I sell that are plain. And the reason that they're plain is so that way you can go and get your favorite artist in Artist Alley and buy some stickers from them. And then, or you can, if you're an artist, you can put your own art on top of it. That idea of like, even if it's a peanut butter sandwich, that idea that if it, has your favorite anime character on
Yeah,
it, it just makes you feel
a lot of the
happy.
simple ones from Daiso are just plain,
Hmm.
and then they have a clear lid. And I'll be honest, I use these to store craft supplies a lot. Also fantastic if you want any kind of clear containers. It's a great option for that. Sorry, this is a lid from a completely different one. But yeah, there's so many cute character ones available too that I tend to collect far more boxes than I will ever use. But
But
yeah, they're
you can put whatever you want, and so it just makes you feel happy when you eat, and just makes you like, oh, this is my favorite character, or I can't wait. The new episode comes on this Friday. I can't wait, and it just makes you feel a little bit happier in your day. Another thing I hear a lot is like, I don't like rice, or I don't like rice that's cold, or I don't like rice that's just been sitting out for a long time. You don't have to use rice. You can use sandwich stuff. You can use pasta, depending on what kind of bento you have. Some of the bentos you can't put them in the microwave, or you may not have access to a microwave. If you were in Japan, your mom would probably make it for you in the morning, so it would, or your wife. And there's problems with that. We're not going to touch that today, but but that idea of like, it's made for you hot in the morning and it comes up to room temperature. For me, because I live in Phoenix, I used to make mine the night before, so it would be cold and coming up to room temperature. So instead of coming down, it's coming up to room temperature. And in the hottest months, I wouldn't use stuff that has a lot of mayonnaise or anything that could possibly spoil. But yeah,
Yeah,
you
that
can use.
was definitely one of the questions I have. I see a lot of people, a lot of suggestions, I should say, not a lot of people, a lot of suggestions are, use whatever you had from the night before. But
Right.
then I'm wondering, how long can it really stay out at room temperature for before it becomes unsafe? So that, I mean, there's a whole list of being able to look things up, but that's always concerned me. Is there something that maybe is special about keeping it sealed in the packaging that might help? I mean, I don't know.
I think so, because it's not like sitting out on the counter where there's air touching it and stuff like that. And I do get that sometimes where people are like, oh no, 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 we couldn't do that because you get food poison. I'm like, okay, I did that for my kids. And sometimes, it wasn't all the time. Sometimes they had sandwiches, but that idea of like, they never had food poisoning in the 12 years that I did that for them. So, is your bologna sandwich going to sit out in the sun? No. What I tell people in Phoenix is you can use Capri Suns as ice packs. So just pack it with an ice pack and put it in a container that has like some kind of, like a cooling kind of thing, and it's been fine. So you can drink the Capri Sun. It'll be a slushy, or you can throw it back in the freezer, or if your friend's having low blood sugar or whatever, you can give it to them. That's one way to do it. But again, my kids use them all the time, and they never had food poisoning. So I don't know if I would put sushi in my lunch and let it sit outside for a long time. But if you have an ice pack and stuff, it should be fine. Plus,
I feel like where it started, they had bamboo containers, certainly a long time ago, and bamboo has slight antimicrobial properties. So I guess if you're really, really worried, find a more traditional bento box.
well,
But
well,
certainly they make such cute ice packs that they have at
yeah,
Daiso too. So
yeah. Well, if you come back to you're making traditional Japanese lunches, what are they made with? You have a lot of vinegar, you have a lot of sugar, you have a lot of soy sauce. And what are those things? Those are all natural, preservatives. And
preservatives.
so that idea that if you're making a traditional lunch, it should be a little bit more uh, stable at room temperature than normal.
That's definitely something to consider. I mean, certainly much more than having sort of leftover pasta type things. Although
Hmm.
obviously we have pasta salads that we get made, but those can have mayonnaise and stuff
Yeah,
like
don't leave
that.
it in
But I
your hot
think,
car. But if you're inside an
yeah,
office building or a school or something like that, just put an ice pack and it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
that's really helpful. Okay, here we go. My favorite part.
Yeah, so tools. So if the biggest thing is getting a rice cooker if you want to make traditional Japanese style, and yes, you can make rice on the stove. Get yourself a rice cooker. Rice cookers are awesome because that way they can keep stuff hot or overnight. It doesn't dry out quite so much, and make sure you use Japanese sticky rice. Like I like nishiki, and you can buy that in a lot of stores here. We talked about a variety of obento boxes and the silicone cupcake inserts, cute decorative picks, especially like stuff with like little eyeballs, because everything is cuter with eyeballs on it. I don't know why, but it just is. The nori cutter, so they look like little paper punches. You just put your little piece of seaweed in there, punch it out.
You can also get kinds that make little cat faces.
Yeah.
I have a lot of cutters. Way too many. I have cutters that are for these are for like cheese.
Yeah, and ham.
And deli meat, ham and
Mhm.
cheese. So I don't have a lot of eye-hand coordination to cut with scissors sometimes, which is weird because I can do it on a cutting mat, but when I'm freehanding with something like that, it comes out looking awful. But these make it so easy, and then you have a huge variety of shapes to work with, and it just storage is your only problem. But they're not that big.
Start off with one drawer, and before you know it, like you have like 3 drawers. I'm not talking from experience or anything, but but egg molds, rice presses, it's just whatever you want to play with. The only thing is, like, if you are using scissors or tweezers or something like that, make sure you have a dedicated set that stays in the kitchen, so you're not like cutting your toenails and the dog's toenails and then coming in the kitchen. So like this is my set for the kitchen only kind of stuff, because you will need tweezers sometimes, like if you're cutting nori for like little faces or whiskers or something like that you kind of like to maneuver them. That would be helpful.
That's really useful. For some of you who may have read K-Club magazine, I certainly this time last year had an article, no, 2 years ago, I had an article that is Halloween onigiri. And so we certainly cut out like little jack-o'-lantern faces or little ghost faces and things like that. And it can be kind of difficult if you don't have tweezers. I use chopsticks, but tweezers would be a lot more helpful for the really tiny pieces. My chopstick skills are not quite that good. So I will have to add that to my kitchen. I have a lot of dishwasher safe kitchen scissors, but I do not yet have a pair of kitchen tweezers. So that will be my next investment. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Oh, the slides actually had more on there. Sorry, I'm
That's okay.
a terrible driver tonight. So I have a lot of those punches. I absolutely love them. And again, you want to keep your food punches separate from your craft punches. They look exactly the same on the inside, but for sanity, or for not sanity's sake, for hygiene's sake and safety's sake, definitely keep them separate. Don't be using them on paper and then using them again to punch nori in the future. And I have absolutely all of these. Fantastic.
So we talked a little bit about being safe with mayonnaise-based foods, especially in the heat of the summer, being careful with sashimi or sushi if it has like the raw fish on top of it. We talked about Capri Suns. So if you're going to go ahead and do the bento thing, invest in like a nice bag or like an insulated bag or something like that. A set that has like a fork, spoon, and chopsticks, cloth napkin, double-walled insulated water bottle, and then you can have a completely trash-free lunch, or at least very, very minimal trash. And see if you make a game of it and see if you can do it. I sell at the cons like sets that have like the hashi and the fork and the spoon, and again they're clear, so you can like put your con stickers on there, and like that's a dedicated, it goes in like the con bag, because there's nothing worse where you get to the end of the day, you finally get to eat and you get your stuff and you realize you have nothing to eat with. So people we were talking about, I was like, okay, well, I took my roommate's toothbrush and my toothbrush, and we put them together with a little rubber band. I was using this chopsticks. Like, okay, all right, well.
And just for the audience, hashi or chopsticks. So if that word is not familiar to you, don't worry about it. There won't be a quiz afterwards, I promise. But also, we're talking about cloth bags. For those of you who watched our program in, let's see, I guess it was December. December on Make Your Monday, we certainly talked about furoshiki and how to package your bento box in a furoshiki. For if you don't have, I would recommend an insulated bag, but if you don't have that, you can have your cloth bag and your napkin in one if you use it to wrap your napkin around the bento.
Yeah, so if you're gonna go to like a special party or something, you know you're gonna eat like soon. So it's not like your everyday lunch for work, but if you're going
Right.
to like a special picnic or something like that, that you can, because you're already gonna be extra as it is, because you have like all your stuff that you made. So you might as well roll up and just be like, here's my furoshiki. I'm gonna like undo it and put it out, and yeah, go ahead. The only thing that you might need, and you can totally buy these at Daiso too, are the little belts and it's just to keep some of the bentos don't have like lids that have like little clicking things or something. So you may have to do that so that way it keeps it from not falling apart. And then you can also tuck your chopsticks or whatever underneath it just to keep it from sliding around. But if you don't have it, it's no big deal. Just use a hairband. That works too.
You can also make them quite easily with any type of wide elastic, or any type of not just super skinny elastic. They don't have to be that wide, but usually, like when you're at Daiso or when you're at craft stores, you can buy like a 1-inch wide elastic, or if you make any type of waistbands, things like that, the same elastic that you already have in the house, you can make quick little bands. Just make them a little bit smaller than the size of the bento, because obviously you want it to stretch snugly and securely, and then just sew it into a circle. It's super quick, so you don't have to worry. You don't have to go buy a special one, is what I'm trying to say. Especially if you have an oddly shaped bento box, it can be really helpful to make your own. Okay.
So we were
I think we just covered this one.
Yeah. That's why the American pioneers did the same thing.
Yeah, those are both antimicrobial. Those are antimicrobial. I didn't know that sugar was, but I certainly know that vinegar and soy sauce, because they're fermented foods already. They have their antimicrobial properties in them. So
yeah,
they can
so that's why I don't know if you
longer.
ever had is it called umeshu? It's the alcohol that you pick the little ume and you put it in like the big in American standards is like what you get like all the cheese balls in the thing that looks like the big cheese ball container. Only in Japan they put the umebush, the little little peaches or plums in there, and then you put the rock sugar, and that was my kid's favorite part because they would make it with their grandparents, and it's like, here, don't you want to try the rock sugar part? Of course you do. And then you just put that on there, and then you just let it ferments, and it settles down, and then you get the cooties off it before you drink it. But that idea that it makes an alcohol out of it, but a very, I think, low level alcohol.
Well, it is. So an umeshu is often called plum wine, even though it's not really a wine. So you possibly had it if you go to Japanese restaurants. You just didn't know what the formal name for it is. I'm a big fan of yuzushu, so it's very similar, but made with yuzu, which is a citrus fruit. I also like yuzushu or umeshu. But I will say that a lot of the reasons for the sugars in there is that the bacteria, and yes, it is a bacteria, but the microbes that ferment have to have some form of sugar to actually create the fermentation process. But for instance, if you're talking about sake or beer, things like that, those are technically sugars. We're getting into a little bit of nutritional concept of sugar rather than just plain white sugar. But that is what these microbes feed off of in order to create the fermentation, in order to make it into a pickle or a soy sauce or a vinegar or things like that. So they are absolutely essential. And then once it's gone through that process, it keeps a lot of the oxygen from getting into the food as well, and can help eat up the oxygen. The oxygen is what makes your food oxidize or go brown.
Turn brown
and that. So that's why you use fruit juice on apples, is to prevent oxidization. So the same thing. You could use vinegar and same.
It's talking about the apples, and we use like the citric acid kind of stuff on it, or lemon juice. My sister-in-law in Japan was dipping it in salt water, so I thought that was interesting. I don't particularly like it that way, but I thought it was very interesting. I'd never seen anybody do that before. But the same idea, just to keep it from oxidizing.
Same concept, yeah. And I'm actually thinking of ways that we could look at maybe. Come up with alternatives to mayo, because my sister-in-law in Australia, instead of putting mayo in sandwiches, she just spreads avocado on there. Mm-hmm. And avocado might turn brown, but it's not going to go off. It's not going to cause food poisoning if it's been over the, and it has a very similar flavor and texture on a sandwich. Mm-hmm. I honestly couldn't tell that it was avocado when I was eating it. So
my mom likes to use hummus. She uses hummus as would use mayonnaise or something
as a condiment. Yeah. That's a great idea too. Okay.
So now we know how to do the basics. Now it's time to think inside the box and put your art in there and show your love for your family, for your significant other, for yourself, that you're worth it, and you don't need to go to McDonald's or whatever and put the garbage in your body. So if you are trying to save up money to go to a con and you like to buy like, prints and stuff from vendors, what I usually tell people is like every time, because it's about changing a habit, every time that you take the time to make your lunch, put $5 in your con can. And by the time con rolls around, whatever is in that can, you get to spend it on whatever you want. It could be the $75, Gundam thing that you want. It doesn't matter, because you did not give that money to McDonald's or Starbucks, because they don't need your money. The people who work at the cons, especially in the vendor hall and the artist alley, those are the people that need your money. So spend wildly there. Bring your own food, make your own food at home, and just have fun with it. And then, when you have friends over, or if you're doing a meetup or a cosplay like kind of event, then you can like show up and show out and be extra. But just have some fun with it.
Excellent advice. So we have just a few links, and we will put these links up on our website afterwards, but feel free to screenshot this as you're watching it if you want to go and save these for later. I recommend take a few seconds now, grab a screenshot, and then you can look up these links. There are I'm assuming that we'll get into that, but there are also entire books. There's Bento Expo, the TV series. Bento has exploded in the last 5 years to be incredibly popular. And so certainly if you're in Austin, if you like physical cookbooks, Kinokuniya has an entire section, like 2 or 3 shelves just on bento cookbooks. So there's more inspiration than you have a lifetime to be able to cook all the recipes for.
So do you guys have Book Off? We don't in Arizona, but if you go to like California or New York, and because Book Off is a Japanese company, and because most Japanese people read so much, it's like a used bookstore. So it's like, you can go in there, and they often have bento magazines for like, $1 or $2 or something like that, or in Japan, for 200 or 300 yen. So that idea that you can go and get cookbooks and you don't have to pay full price to have them. So if you're in New York or in Los Angeles, I think it's in Los Angeles that they have some too.
Los Angeles has everything. They even have Coco's Curry in Los Angeles. So no, we don't. I think because Half Price Books is so strong in Austin, it's very hard for another chain to come in here. Obviously, Half Price Books is a very similar concept as a used and new bookstore, but it is, I believe, originally from Texas. They're certainly headquartered in Texas now, and there are 11 of them in the Austin area, and they're enormous. They're like, if you remember what Borders used to look like, they're usually in former Borders locations. They're quite large. So we have my parents, when they come out from North Carolina, they will actually drive here just because they're usually taking several boxes of books back with them every single time. My dad goes to every single store in Austin. That's all he does. So yeah, and the cookbook sections are enormous too. So really helpful.
So yeah, this is how you can get in touch with me. I love to talk about food. I post quite a lot on Instagram about my different. I don't have my Instagram on there, so it's just my name, Sara, and 2 F's, so F Fujimura, and I do a lot of like, this is what I'm making, or like before the cons, I'll make some special foods, and so that way you can see how it's done.
Fantastic. So let us go ahead and move on to we only have about 20 minutes left because Sara has to go eat. And certainly after talking about bento, everyone's going to want to eat
stomach's growling already. I'm like really hungry now. We have family dinner.
I know. I had to make a special effort. I had a very late lunch so that I could do this program beforehand without being hungry, but I've learned my lesson on that. But let's also talk about your day job, as it is, as it were, as an author. So one of the things that people often, I'm trying to put away this stuff without like making it look awkward, but it's going to look awkward. Give me a second. There we go. Okay. So can you tell us about how I know you mentioned that you have certain foods in your novels, but how do these two play together? I mean, what sort of got you into from being, the Obento lady into expanding your creativity? Because certainly we want to talk about more of creativity as a lifestyle here on this program. So how do you transition from having two very creative hobbies that to me would seem to like vie for your attention and your creativity? How does that work?
Well, because I weave them together. So I only do a couple cons each year, but I write all the time, and I just love putting things together. So like how people relate to their world. So especially for Japan, some people are like, oh, I know I really love anime, or oh, I'm really into Buddhism, or I'm really into like electronics or something like that. So finding ways that you can connect. So for my first book, So this is Tanabata Wish. This came out in 2017. This one is about a girl who is a foodie. Her dad is a professional chef, and that's how she relates to her bigger world, whether she's in Arizona or if she's in with her dad in New Orleans. And when she's in Japan, that's how she connects. So she eats out through the entire book. She learns how to make bento. She goes out into the countryside to her stepdad's family's their family house, and she learns how to make shabu shabu. She makes shabu shabu for Ryohei when he comes over for the first time to meet the parents. So people always tell me like they're really hungry by the time they're done reading. But I love to show culture through that. And when you were talking at the beginning about omamori, so I pulled a couple things too. So I have a little omamori. So I love Tanabata. Tanabata is usually celebrated on 7/7. It's the lucky day. It's the Volta. It's Altair and Vega, the two stars that come together, but it's the star-crossed lovers story. And Japan has its variation on it. The Chinese and the Koreans have a version also, and they usually celebrate it a little bit later. They celebrate it with the lunar calendar, where the Japanese celebrate it most of the time with our regular calendar. So it's usually 7/7. So one thing that makes it a little bit different is in Japan, they have the tanzaku. So these are, if you ever go to Japan, this is a Japanese thing. They have like the bamboo, and then they have these little wish papers. They look like little
We
bookmarks.
actually usually have that at Okoshikon as well. We put
Yes.
up a wishing tree, even though we're usually a little bit later. We're usually like the 17th of July, but we still put up a wishing tree at Okoshikon. So if you want to experience that, you can certainly come.
So you write your wish on there, and my wishes have always come true. Sometimes it takes more than a year for them to manifest, but they always come true. And so I've always loved that holiday and that idea of the bigger idea with the two characters of two people who should never have met. So Sky is from Phoenix, and Ryohei is biracial Japanese American boy. He lives in LA, but he goes to Nagoya every summer to stay with his grandparents, like my kids do. So kids who have a foot in two different worlds and are trying to figure out how they fit into the bigger world. And one of the conversations you hear a lot in Japan and in the United States too, but in Japan, is that you're not Japanese enough, and you're not other enough, like, so you're not American enough, you're not Japanese enough, and how you fit into that bigger world. A lot of kids struggle with that. So I wanted to play around with that dynamic, and I wanted to include little omamori and the omakuji, the little wish papers that you get. And then if you watch a lot of anime,
papers, yeah,
they're little fortune papers, and if it's a bad fortune, you tie it on like the little wire and leave it behind, or if it's a good one, you bring it with you. I have these in here.
Daruma.
I love Daruma. I have a whole herd of Daruma. I have about 17 of them.
Oh wow!
I love it. So
I have 4. I have my my kamidana right here, and so we have 4 of them up there at the moment. Only one of which has come true so far. But we have so the concept behind the dharma is you fill in one eye when you make the wish, and you fill in the other eye when it is fulfilled. So yeah, most of ours are
So
one-eyed dharma at the moment.
When you give him his first eye, and then you put him like on your desk or wherever. So if you're saying, I want to go to Japan, and going to Japan is very expensive, so you need to save money. So you put him, and every time like, oh, I'm really tired, I'm just going to order pizza. It's like, no, 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 no. He's the friendly nagger. He's like, no, 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 we're saving our money because we're going to Japan. And then some people, once they get the second eye, some people burn them, some people wash them away. Or in Tanabata Wish, Ryohei and his grandfather Oji-san make them every year, and they put them up on the shelf as a reminder of all the things that they've accomplished together. So I love Daruma. They're my favorite. But I have like little bits of that, and that's what I put in the book, because I said it in Nagoya. Nagoya is the 4th biggest city in Japan. It's where my husband grew up. His family doesn't live there anymore, but I said it in his neighborhood. So if you're one of those people who likes to walk into their books, you can go to real places. Like if you're coming through Nagoya Station, you can go to the big golden clock outside of Takashimaya. You can walk across the little bridge where they live and stuff. So it's a lot of fun if you like to go to real places and check things out.
That's fantastic. I was definitely going to have to read that before my next trip, because I am planning to go to Nagoya. And certainly real estate is very reasonable in Nagoya. So that's one of the places on our target list as we're looking to buy a house over there. So yeah.
So these two books, though this is my first book and my 4th book, these two are actually closer than any of the other books, because in Faking Reality, Leo's family is originally from Nagoya also, and there's a big Nagoya tie-in, and he has been studying Japanese. He and Dakota, who's the main character, studied Japanese at their high school. and they're going on the big. They want to go on the big annual trip to Japan because this year they're coming through Nagoya, and Leo has a very specific reason why he wants to go to Nagoya, and he has to do some things to help his family, so he wants to do that. But there's a lot of food in that book too, and I just love playing around with that idea of how food influences you and how it's part of your family or part of your culture. It's part of other people's culture, but it still resonates with you. So just playing around with those types of fun little specific things I like to
I
do in
mean,
my
that
books.
reminds me, there's one question I'll throw out there. I already know the answer, but I know that this comes up a lot in that there are, someone is going to ask, is it disrespectful of Japanese people to be making your own bento?
For me to make bento or for
Yeah, for anyone not Japanese to make bento. So I
Mm,
happen to know, certainly in Japan, they're encouraging other people to do it. So my opinion is that they're not, otherwise they wouldn't be promoting it to the entire world. But that's a question that we've been getting asked lately a lot because, whether it's wearing kimono or whether it's
yeah,
even,
yeah.
praying at shrines when you're not Japanese. There's always some people who are like, am I allowed to do that? Is it okay?
No, that's it's a very thorny question, and I get that a lot too. So who are you? Because again, I'm white. Who are you to write this story? And so there's some people who are like, I only read own voices. That means written by somebody who is of that, and I respect that. And I have a list on my website of books. So I have a list on my website of young adult books that feature either the main character or the love interest is a biracial Asian person, so Asian and something else. Not all of them are Japanese, but quite a few are. And the idea of like, okay, if I have a whole list, it's a very short list still, but if you only read own voices or you only want to read people who are biracial Asians themselves, I totally respect that. If you want to go a little bit wider, there are people who they call it lived experience. So I have friends who have lived all their adult lives in Japan, and they are a white American woman, and she's married to a Japanese man, and she has biracial kids too. And so it's interesting to see what it looks like. So yeah, I think you need to be very careful about what you do and why you do it. If you go to the the Arizona Matsuri, should you wear your kimono? Should you wear your yukata that you bought while you were in Japan? I don't personally. Um, but that's kind of up to you. And so know that you may get some pushback, and you need to understand what you're doing and why. Definitely do not wear it as a Halloween costume. No, 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 no. Do not do that. But if if
But
you're
bento is
cosplaying,
specifically, do you see any problems since that was the
no, I've
main
never
topic
had
of
anybody
our program
give
today?
me grief about that. No, no.
Yeah,
Um,
I just thought I'd put it out there because I know someone's going to come back and ask later. And my general answer is if I see NHK World, and NHK is one of the main Japanese broadcasters, so they're equivalent of PBS in America. So if they are trying to evangelize to the rest of the world saying, hey, do this Japanese thing, then I'm going to assume that it's at least mostly okay as long as you're doing it respectfully and, you're not doing crazy things, you're not somehow, I can't even think of what you would do with the
to me,
bento that
it's
would be
food
offensive,
prepping.
but
I think it's different though. I mean, if you're making osechi, I don't know, maybe I don't know. I haven't gotten pushback on that. I have gotten pushback on some other stuff. And what's interesting is sometimes I can't think of a specific example right now, but I have gotten pushback sometimes on some scenes that I have, and I'm like, well, I understand where you're coming from, but that was the conversation we had at our dinner table with with my kids and their friends who are also biracial Japanese or biracial Asian. So I'm like, I'm a reflector of what I see, and I try to be respectful. And I definitely we have they used to be called sensitivity readers. We don't call them that anymore. They're expert readers. So, and I have expert readers look at everything I do, whether it's history or culture or language. One of the biggest things I tell people is don't rely on Google Translate with when you're writing in a different language. Make sure you have somebody who speaks the language fluently, because in Japanese, like I said at the beginning, my friend saying you don't have to speak to us in such a respectful way, Sarah, because we've been friends for a long time, and I have to say I have to because I only speak like textbook Japanese and a lot of mommy Japanese. But the idea of in the book, there's a difference when Ryohei is talking to his buddy who's like 16 like he is, then they're shooting the bull with each other. They're going to speak to each other very rudely. They're talking smack with each other. So two teen boys talking to each other are going to speak differently than he would speak to his grandmother. He would speak informally but still respectfully to his grandmother. And then if he's talking to his teacher, he would speak both, formally and respectfully on top of it. So knowing, how old the person is, are they above you, are they below you, and or are you speaking to a small child? So that's different. So even if it's technically correct, it still may not be correct. So being careful with what you do. And then sometimes I get surprised. So my second book, Breathe, is set in 1918 Philadelphia against the Spanish flu pandemic. So this is my American one. And we have our debutante girl and we have our boy who is their family's chauffeur, and he's Italian American. And people forget that in 1918, Italians and the Irish too were second class citizens in America. And for me, I was writing a scene. It was one big scene where they're crossing the boundary of class. So it's Virginia and her sister who are upper crust ladies, and they're having dinner in the kitchen. First of all, they're eating in the kitchen, which is like, oh my gosh, we're eating in the
Couldn't do
kitchen.
that.
And we're eating
Yeah.
in the kitchen with the help. We're eating with our chauffeur and his sister, who is it's like, oh, we're just so different. But when I was writing this scene, it's like, okay, well, what would this family eat that was different? So I put spaghetti and meatballs because I just needed a placeholder. And I was moving on the scene, and I'll come back. I'm surely they did not eat spaghetti and meatballs because that's just way too stereotypical. But when I came back and did research, they really would have eaten spaghetti and meatballs for that time, especially where Marco's family is coming from Naples, Italy. That there was like meat, so they didn't get to eat meat that much. So when the Italian Americans came to America, there was a lot of meat. So for the first time, they were able to eat meatballs that had a lot of meat in them and less of the breadcrumbs. And so Marco even says it in the book. you know, my mother says that this is not real, not real meatballs. There's too much meat in the meatballs. But just that idea of like playing around with what's the stereotype, and then okay, let's go back and make sure that it's not the stereotype, or if it is the stereotype, make sure that you go that one extra step of why you are using this. So being very intentional, and that's my biggest thing when you're writing outside your lane. I'm part of the Japan Writers Conference this coming weekend, and I am on a panel and we're talking about writing inside and outside of your lane. So if you have some questions that you want to know about, it's a free conference. You just have to do it ahead of time, and it's in Japan. It's usually in person in Japan. This is the second year it'll be done online. So the bad news is I had hoped to be in Japan in October so that I could do this, but they're not being able to do it anyway. So it's going to be online. So it's in Phoenix. It'll be 10 p.m. on Friday night is the Saturday panel that we have. But that's what we're going to be talking about with who gets to write what, and are you okay with like, all right, well, there's going to be some people who don't think you should be writing this at all. So and then there's people who, one of the biggest compliments that I get is when people say, I needed this book. I needed this book when I was a teenager. I feel seen. And this is by biracial Asian people, Japanese Americans who have said, I feel seen for the first time. And so that lets me know that I did what I did, and that I did it well. But there's people like, you should not be writing this. You don't get points just because, you're married to a Japanese person. So, I do my research. I do the best I can with it, and I look for the universal story. So I put a lot of specifics on it, with having osechi for the New Year's and things like that. But at the end of the day, these are universal stories. So it doesn't matter where you live in the world or what socioeconomic class you are, what language you speak, what religion you are. It's those universal stories that we all can resonate with, whether wherever we live or whatever our personal circumstances are, because there are truly only 7 stories in the world. So if you do research, if you're a writer, there are only 7 stories in the world, and they're all like just plays on them. So
And we can all go back and reread Joseph Campbell over and over and over again
yes.
too, because the archetype's the same thing. Well, thank you so much. We're running the time for you to go to your family dinner, and I would just like to thank you again. I believe you have one last thing to say to our audience.
Yes. So if you've liked what you've heard today and you live in the United States, sorry for people outside the United States, I am giving away 10 copies of Itadakimasu. This is the little cook booklet that pretty much sums up everything we talked about today about how to make bento, and it gives you some suggestions on, if you have some time, how to make it extra and make it really special, or if you're really short on time, here's how you can cheat it and still have a good lunch. So if you go through my website, it's www.Sara Fujimura
On the bottom of the screen.
FUJIMURA.com. At the bottom of the screen, you can send me an email through my website, and the first 10 people to do that, I will send you a free copy. Just tell me where to send it. And out of those 10, I'm going to pick one person to win a special prize. I'm going to send you a copy of Tanabata Wish. So if you've been to Japan, you want to go to Japan, this will help you get started and send you like a little thing. So I'm going to pull a winner probably on the 18th. So that's next Monday. I will pull a winner so I can get that sent out to you. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I could talk about food and books all day long in Japan all day long.
We are so glad to have you. We hope that you can come to AkashaCon live in person next year and do it all again. And maybe we can team up and do it together, and we can talk about all the, I have so many things to show. I have so many things to talk about. But, again, me, I will take forever. I will let you go. Thank you so much. And for the rest of our audience, thank you so much for joining us. Please sign up if you are interested in Sarah's book. I know I will be signing up for it later. And we will be seeing Sara hopefully in Austin next year. And the rest of you, please come back on the 24th at 2 p.m. So that is the fourth Sunday of the month for Japan Stories, where I'll be talking about Goshuin and Omamori, and also a little bit about my experience making my own Goshuin book called Goshuin Show in Kyoto. And we will be live streaming again on the second Monday of the month at this time. In the future episodes, we will be talking about needle felting, which is very popular in Japan. I know it doesn't seem like a Japanese craft, but it's super popular over there. We'll be talking about resin crafting, probably have a special guest on to talk about polymer clay. And we'll also be doing a little bit of sumigashi, which is a Japanese paper marbling. So please come back for the rest in the next several months, and we will see you very soon. Thank you all, and have a great night. Bye.